Let's talk about Emperor Rudolf II, the Holy Roman Emperor who ruled in the late 1500s and early 1600s. If you've never heard of him, don't worry. Most people haven't. And that's partly because his life was so bizarre that historians have a hard time deciding whether he was an eccentric genius or just completely off his rocker. And I'm not exaggerating here. This man collected human body parts, kept deformed people and animals in his palace, believed he could talk to spirits, and turned Prague Castle into what can only be described as a Renaissance version of a haunted freak show museum. When Rudolf took power, he moved his court to Prague, which at the time was kind of like Europe's middle of nowhere. And people were confused. Why leave Vienna? But Rudolf wanted privacy. He wanted space to, collect things. And when I say collect, I don't mean stamps. I mean he filled his place with pickled animal fetuses in jars, human skulls and skeletons, weird, malformed creatures preserved in alcohol, and even living people with unusual deformities, dwarfs, giants, and others he called his curiosities. Imagine walking into a palace where instead of golden jewels, you're greeted by shelves of rotting biological specimens and occasionally screaming monkey. That was Rudolph's aesthetic. He probably could be considered the original hoarder. He was obsessed with gathering everything. He had what he was called a Kunstkammer, a cabinet of curiosities, but his wasn't a cute little museum corner. His collection literally took up entire wings of the palace. And we're talking rare gems and paintings by people like Dürer and Bruegel, scientific instruments, weird plants and animals shipped from all over the world, and even alchemy experiments that stank up the halls with sulfur and rotten metals. Guests wrote that his palace smelled like a mixture of a slaughterhouse, an apothecary, and a zoo. And I know that I just said that word wrong, but I've already filmed it several times and I'm not getting it today. Anywho. One of Rudolph's favorite pastimes was just sitting in his collection rooms, staring at jars of pickled body parts for hours. Like, that was his relaxation. Some emperors liked hunting, some liked gambling. Rudolph liked watching the light shine through the floating eyeballs. And he didn't just keep animals. He was fascinated by humans born with unusual conditions. He brought them to court, dressed them up, and made them perform in strange rituals or banquets. What's worse, he sometimes kept them next to exotic animals like lions or camels just to see how the people would react. Speaking of banquets, Rudolph was notorious for serving questionable food. He loved exotic meats and he wasn't picky about freshness. If it smelled a little off, that didn't stop him. Court records say he once served meat crawling with maggots, insisting it was a delicacy. Imagine being a visiting ambassador sitting down to dinner and being offered a plate of half-rotten boar, while across the hall you can see a two-headed calf floating in a jar. That's the vibe of Rudolph's dinner parties. Now, Rudolph wasn't just gross for the fun of it. He believed all of this collecting, the bones, the strange animals, the alchemy experiments, would help him unlock the secrets of the universe. He was obsessed with turning lead into gold, summoning spirits, and finding the philosopher's stone. He surrounded himself with astrologers and alchemists, filling his palace with smoke, strange powders, and experiments that often exploded or leaked foul chemicals. The air in Prague Castle was said to stink so badly from these labs that servants refused to go in without covering their faces. As Rudolph got older, his mental health spiraled. He became a recluse, locking himself in his palace with his grotesque collections. He often refused to bathe or change his clothes for weeks at a time. Servants wrote that he would sit in the same soiled outfit for days, surrounded by rotting food, jars of preserved animals, and the stench of his own unwashed body. Ugh. Eventually, his obsession with the grotesque and his paranoia led him to a complete breakdown. His own family had to step in, strip him of power, and basically keep him confined in his smelly palace until he died. And then here's the wildest part. Even though Rudolph was gross and eccentric, he accidentally left behind one of the most important collections of art and science in Europe. Hidden among the pickled fetuses and rotting meat were works by masters. rare instruments, and scientific knowledge that influenced future generations. But make no mistake, if you had visited him in person, you probably would have gagged from the smell before you noticed the genius. So the next time you think your boss is weird for microwaving fish in the office, just be glad that you're not dining with Emperor Rudolph II, who thought rotting meat and jars of human eyeballs were the height of good taste. So, is he gross? Weird? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.